Good afternoon. Welcome to the formal meeting of the Phoenix City Council. We'll begin with an invocation from Fire Chaplain Nick Petrucci.
Thank you for this honor. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for this afternoon you have blessed us with so we can gather with Mayor Gallego and the City Council for today's agenda. We invite you here today to be with our council as they tackle the issues and pursue ways to move this great city forward. I pray for each member present here today. Please give them wisdom and discernment. Please protect our police and fire departments as they respond to the needs of our citizens and cries for help. Please also be with our dispatchers and alarm room personnel. Protect them mentally, Lord. Father, I pray for every leader and employee of our city. Give them courage and the ability to do their best. May we never forget who we serve and represent. Let us stand on your word, God. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. May the words written in our currency, in God we trust, and the words we recite in our Pledge of Allegiance, one nation under God, be brought to remembrance and be put into action. I praise you, God, for all you have provided for each and every one of us and the opportunities you have given each and every one of us. I love the charge you give us in your word. Too much is given, much is expected. May we all come together individually and collectively to do our part for our family, our great city, and for our country. God, please bless each of us, this meeting, our city, and our country. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. Councilman DeCiccio, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll now call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilwoman Ansari.
Here.
Councilman DeCiccio.
Here.
Councilmember Garcia.
Here.
Councilwoman Guardado.
Here.
Councilwoman O'Brien.
Here.
Councilwoman Stark.
Here.
Councilman Waring.
Here.
Vice Mayor Pastor.
Here.
Mayor Gallego.
Here. Mario Barajas is with us to provide interpretation. Mario, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Hello, my name is Mario Barajas, and together with my colleague, Elsie Duarte, we will be serving as today's Spanish interpreters for the meeting. I'll now take a moment to introduce ourselves to our Spanish-speaking audience and review some guidelines. Hola, buenas tardes. Bienvenidos a la reunión esta tarde. Mi nombre es Mario Barajas y junto con mi colega Elsie Duarte estaremos sirviéndoles como intérpretes a los de habla hispana. Deseamos pedirles de antemano, si es que van a dar un comentario público, por favor, hable despacio, con claridad y evite tener distracciones de fondo. Finalmente, pause después de cada cuantas oraciones para que le podamos interpretar lo que esté diciendo de la manera más completa posible. Muchas gracias. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mario. Will the city clerk please read the 24-hour paragraph?
The titles of the following ordinance and resolution numbers on the agenda were available to the public at least 24 hours prior to this council meeting and therefore may be read by title or agenda item only. Ordinances number G6964 and 7011 through 7028, S48964 through 48990, and resolutions 22061 through 22068.
Thank you. I'll now turn to our city attorney to explain the role of public comment in council meetings.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the public may speak for up to 2 minutes to comment on agenda items to be discussed. Comments must be related to the agenda item and the action being considered by the council. General comments that go beyond the scope of the agenda item must be made in the citizen comment session at the end of the agenda. The City Council and staff cannot discuss or comment on matters related to pending investigations, claims, or litigation. The City Code requires speakers to present their comments in a respectful and courteous manner. Profane language, threats, or personal attacks on members of the public, council members, or staff are not allowed. A person who violates these rules will lose the opportunity to continue to speak.
Thank you. Boards and commissions, item 1. Vice Mayor, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve Mayor and City Council boards and commissions nomination as revised.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Passes unanimously. Vice Mayor, do we have a motion on liquor licenses?
Motion to approve items 2 through 11.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, nay? And staff, do we have anyone here to be sworn in for boards and commissions? Wonderful. We will officially swear in. Thank you to those who are serving our community in these important roles. Please repeat after me, and please raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Elizabeth Wood,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and the laws of the state of Arizona,
and the Constitution and the laws of the state of Arizona,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of the office of, and then the name,
discharge the duty of the office of Phoenix Women's Commission
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Thank you for serving your community. If you would like to go behind, the council members would like to thank you in person.
Village Planning Committee, Levine, Soraya.
City Clerk, are we ready for ordinances, resolutions, new business, planning, and zoning?
Yes, Mayor.
Vice Mayor, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve items 12 through 72, except the following. Items 21, 26, 35, 36, 37, and 64 through 72. Noting that items 31 through 33 are continued to September 21st, 2022. Item 35 is as revised per the September 7th, 2022 memo from the Street Transportation Director. Item 48 is as corrected. Item 63 is continued to December 7th, 2022. And excluding these items for virtual public comment, items 35 and 71. And can the clerk confirm if there are any other items that should be excluded for in-person public comment?
Yes, Vice Mayor. Also excluding item 38.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, do we have a second?
Second.
Any comments? Roll call.
Ansari,
Yes.
DeCiccio,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Guardado,
Yes.
O'Brien,
Yes.
Stark,
Yes.
Waring,
Yes.
Pastor, Gallego.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Next, we go to item 21, Auction Indian Community Gaming Grants. Do we have a motion?
I move item 21.
Second.
Councilmember Garcia, I'll turn to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to extend gratitude and thanks to the Action Indian community. The city's relationship with the surrounding tribes is a relationship we should cherish and continue to strengthen. Especially wanted to highlight in this grant that there will be $50,000 going to Native American Connections, who will be delivering homeless youth services for the transition age of youth from 18 to 24. This age range is currently being underserved, and so really excited that this grant is coming through. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call.
Ansari,
Yes.
DeCiccio,
Thank you, Mayor. Just be really quick. Just another great example of a relationship that we have with our tribal communities in Arizona. They've proven to be just fantastic partners of ours, and I vote yes. Thank you.
Garcia,
Yes.
Guardado,
Yes.
O'Brien,
Yes.
Stark,
Yes.
Waring,
Yes.
Pastor,
Woohoo, yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Next, we go to item 26, Gated Alley Program Implementation. Do we have a motion?
I move item 26.
Second.
Thank you. And this, we've had some council members show great leadership on this program. Really appreciate their hard work. Very important to our community. We have several council members to comment. We'll start with Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you, Mayor. I remember when we first started this program as a pilot, it arose from a situation where a man jumped over the gate in the alley and exposed himself to two small girls. It was really a tragic and sad event, but the neighborhood insisted that we needed to do something, and so we started a pilot project for gated alleys in District 3 and 5. And now it has grown citywide, and so I'm very happy to see that we are going to make this a permanent program. And I really want to thank all the staff, and there's a lot of staff that was involved in this, for making this a reality. I know that my constituents are very excited about this program. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll go next to Councilwoman Ansari, followed by Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. I, too, wanted to firstly thank Councilwoman Guardado and Councilwoman Stark on their leadership on this issue. I can confidently say that District 7 residents and our entire city will benefit from the expanded and now permanent gated alley program. And we're not just finding dollars for more gated alleys, but we're also investing in neighborhood support to make sure this process is as easy as possible. And I know there's been a lot of thought and a lot of input gone into the equity piece and the thoughtfulness for this program. So I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. I don't know if Spencer's available to highlight some of these pieces that I think are really commendable of the new permanent program. Thanks, Spencer. Thank you. So I know in cases where it may be difficult to locate property owners or to obtain signatures, what kind of support will be available to interested residents for this program?
Mayor, Councilwoman, absolutely. That is a huge part of the permanent ongoing program, is providing the additional staff support. And thankfully, with the budget that was approved for this year, we are recruiting right now a project manager who will help oversee the process and work with the community, as well as provide support from our neighborhood specialists. We're also getting volunteers to help out, including youth volunteers who will help and are trained on how to evaluate those signatures, make sure they're appropriate, get signatures, and especially in our low and moderate income communities, be able to do that in partnership with the neighborhood so that they're not on their own. The other thing that we're providing is interpretation services to make sure that it's accessible for all.
And you kind of touched on this, but if interested residents along an alley segment don't have like a formal neighborhood association, what can be done?
Sure. We always encourage folks to create a neighborhood association if they don't have one, and if this is a worthwhile endeavor, I think that a lot of community members will come together and form one. However, we do recognize that that is sometimes a barrier, and so sometimes when we have situations where there is crime, graffiti, illegal dumping, a lot of the bad things that may be happening in alleys, we don't want that one artificial barrier to prevent them from being able to participate. So that is another big piece of the equity component that we will work with them. We will try to encourage them strongly to get to create a neighborhood association, but if they can't, we will not let that be a barrier.
Wonderful. And you touched on this slightly as well, but you talked about the focus on low and moderate income neighborhoods. Can you talk a little bit more about what specific amounts of funding or what percentage of the funding is dedicated for those communities in particular?
Absolutely. We've set aside $100,000, which is approximately, well, it's 20% of the total funding available, to make sure that if their low and moderate income communities are not able to access the program, that funding will be set aside for them.
Great. Thank you. I just wanted you to be able to highlight that. I think those new pieces are really, really phenomenal for this program. I know lengthy city processes can be extremely difficult for families, and the interpreter piece especially and the dedicated staff support for this is going to be great. So thank you so much to you and your team, Alan, and I know a lot of neighbors and community members have been involved in shaping this permanent program, so congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go next to Councilmember Garcia, followed by Councilwoman O'Brien, followed by Councilwoman Guardado, followed by the Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just following up on that question, so 20% goes to low and moderate income. How does the other 80% get determined?
Sure. So for the other 80%, we are doing essentially a first come, first serve. So I know there's a lot of communities that reached out to us throughout the pilot program asking to be part of this. And so we know that some of them are already ready. They've started gathering signatures. So as we evaluate, we'll make sure that we are trying to be as equitable as possible in making sure that those who are submitting first get that opportunity to get their alleys gated.
So one of the situations we've ran into south of the Human Services campus is, the requirements. In order for you to be able to have an alley gate, basically everything has to be fenced in. And so we have some areas that the community wants it, we've selected, but then there's empty lots within the... So there's is it
Hello?
a little prank?
Tomas, can you turn it on?
So there's segments where
Actually,
there's
I'm
empty
going
lots. Could there potentially be either support for the folks that own those lots or getting those folks to fence in the back? So is there any other funding that we can tap into to make some of these alleyways eligible?
Sure. So it's particularly tricky working with private property owners on improvements to their private property. That is not something that we've been able to overcome given gift clause issues with the state constitution. So at this point, there's no city funding that we've been able to provide. However, we have had good luck working with communities on fundraising, looking to business partners or some of the council districts as well. Your teams have also done a wonderful effort working with the community and helping to raise some funding to fence in some of those areas where otherwise we would not be able to gate.
So the only way we would be able to get some of these alleyways done is if they themselves fundraise to fill in those gaps. Is that correct?
At this point, yes.
I think with some of these issues, with this and other things, I do think we should, now that we've had this conversation a couple of years ago, look at other options, not just getting alleys. I think abandoning certain alleys or just looking for different options for different communities would be important. And I think back to the associate, just to clarity on their interpretation and what's going to be provided. If a general person from the public, not a part of the association, are they eligible for the services? Will the interpretation be open to anyone that's wanting to do this?
Absolutely. We'll work with any neighborhood on trying to do improvements, whether they're gated alleys or otherwise. Anytime that we can help pull people together to take on a challenge, we're there.
Thank you.
Councilwoman O'Brien, followed by Councilwoman Guardado.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I just wanted to say that I'm very excited that this program is becoming permanent, but I want to especially thank Councilwoman Stark and Councilwoman Guardado for your efforts in starting this pilot, and the city staff for all the hard work in getting here. Also, thank you to all the constituents across the city who called in during budget time and advocated for this to become a permanent program. The program is a shining example of what can be done when constituents advocate and implore their council members to spend their tax dollars wisely and for purposes that improve their quality of life. My own constituents have been requesting gates through the pilot program, and we were able to secure an entire neighborhood along the canal. I already have community leaders, as Spencer has referred to, some of them on his list probably, that have already collected signatures and want to know how they can get some of those gates in this permanent program. So I'm excited to support the program and look forward to its continued success. Thank you, Spencer, and to the rest of your staff and councilwomen.
Councilwoman Guardado.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I think I've also lost count of how many neighbors have brought this issue to our attention when it comes to the alleys. They have been, a lot of these alleys, as I've talked about in the past, have been abandoned to illegal dumping, vandalism, and disrepair. The item before us creates a process for neighbors to get organized and work with our council offices and city staff to address this problem. I am proud of the work my council team and I have put into helping hundreds of residents throughout District 5 gate their alleys. The process has empowered numerous residents and helped us work together to begin addressing other neighborhood issues. I want to give a special shout out to Emmanuel from my office. He's done a lot of great work on this. Just this morning, he turned in 8 more applications along 27th Avenue and has definitely activated a lot of the neighbors around that area with all the other issues that we're also working on 27th Avenue. And I also want to underscore again how much this program relies on resident involvement. Just today, my office finalized the submission of 18 separate alley gates for neighbors who got in organized. For these neighbors, this program is about more than putting a gate in their alley. It's about taking control of their neighborhoods so their kids can safely walk to school and play in their backyards. These residents who have now formed the Montebello Avenue Neighborhood Association now have the support of the city in ways they have never had in the past. I want to personally thank Alan Stevenson and the staff of Planning and Development and Neighborhood Services Department for their hard work on this item. I am very happy to be voting yes on this item, but I just needed just a little bit of clarification. I know I've asked Spencer, and I know Alan, you and I just talked about this not that long ago. I think our biggest issue, at least in areas in Maryville that we're trying to gate, our biggest problem is not so much getting the signatures, it's getting the right person to sign. Like, we have tons of segments where it's a lot of renters. I would say 80-90% of them are renters, and the owners of these properties live out of the state. And I wanted to see if you can just to put on the record, what are the different things that we are planning on doing to make sure that we can still gate those alleys, and put in, and what type of effort are we going to be putting into making sure that we have proof that we did the outreach, that we try to get a hold of these owners, and what are we going to do to be able to gate those alleys?
So, Mayor, Councilwoman Guardado, excellent question. I think the first thing I want to hit on is that the success of the pilot program has really been due to a significant amount of work that the council office and the neighborhoods have done, as many of you have alluded to. And it was a program that really was set up without any staff resources directly devoted to that, and so the community picked up a lot of things, and your council offices did. And one of the things that you've identified as that challenge is getting those property owner signatures to qualify for that. And so we have talked to the law department about it, who's doing some research and looking into what can be done to overcome that if we can't get all of the property owner signatures. But one of the key things that they talked to us about was making sure that we had a good record of what is the outreach that we have done as staff, so that we can make sure that in the future, if there is concerns by a property owner about it, that we were able to document the outreach that was done before there was ever a gate installed. And that's where switching from the pilot program that was more council office neighborhood driven to one that has a dedicated staff person and is a regular city program. Spencer's group will be working on those hard to reach areas. We'll still be working with neighborhood groups and your offices, but when we get to some of those hard to reach property owners, that's where Spencer's team will step in, and then I'll let him talk about some of the things they're going to do to try and make sure that we do everything we can to get the property owners to sign up.
Thanks, Alan. Absolutely. So not only will we have a trained workforce between our neighborhood specialists and our volunteers who will be working on this effort, but we'll also tap into some of the tools we have on the code enforcement side. Obviously, in order to do effective code enforcement, we're also making sure that we're reaching out and getting a hold of owners, giving them proper notice for those types of things. We can use some of those same tools to engage with them and make sure that we are contacting them to give them the option of the gated alleys.
Great. So just with that, I think it'd be good for you guys to put together like a checklist in terms of this is a checklist that we need to be able to hit in order to be able to cover our bases before we gate those alleys. And I think it's something good for us as council members to have as we are going through that process with a lot of these residents that are just renters but desperately want to be able to gate those alleys. It'd be nice to be able to have a list like that we can go through with them, and that we also understand what are the different steps that we need to following up with all of you in terms, to be able to get to that end point of being able to gate that alley. But with that, thank you guys so much for all of your hard work and everything that you guys have done, and excited to be able to support this item. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Waring.
Thanks, Mayor. So we don't, Alan, Spencer, if we have new zoning cases, we don't really allow new alleys to be created, correct?
Mayor,
that's a blanket statement, but I think in the aggregate it's basically true, correct?
Mayor, Councilman Waring, you are correct in the aggregate. Now, there are new developments that are in areas where they're adjacent to an alley, and so they would likely keep that alley going. But there are times when they will seek to abandon an alley and expand the development area, which then gets reviewed by Public Works and other departments and has to go through a public hearing process to abandon an alley and then develop it privately. But that is possible.
And so hopefully there'll be a finite number of alleys that need to be gated at some point. My point is, my area further north, the area I represent, we're not really creating new alleys for the most part in that area. So we don't have as many alleys as maybe the other neighborhoods. But I think it's a good project, program, and it's a good use of taxpayer funds. My question is, and I think I brought it up to, I can't remember which one of you it was, maybe both, so it'll probably seem familiar. We do have alleys in some of the older neighborhoods, but they're not alleys in the traditional, there's a wall on each side. There's a wall and then maybe a row of oleanders or something like that. My neighborhood has a bunch of them. Or it's kind of a wash, and then there's the effect is like an alley. Is there a way so there's nothing, if you put a gate, there's nothing to anchor the second side of the gate to. Is there a way to address that? I can't remember exactly how it went the last time. I get what you're saying in your answer. I think it was to Carlos about, we can't improve people's properties. But there might be people who are like, I basically got an alley behind my house. I'd like to take advantage of this program. How do we overcome this seemingly surmountable obstacle of how do we get something else to attach, not build a whole wall, but at least make there be a gate so you'd have to climb through bushes or something if you were really dedicated to getting back in there. Is there some way to address that? Because when I go around a door knock, I see that fairly frequently. But it's not the same scenario that you might see in District 3 where, subdivision was built, and there's like a tunnel effect.
Mayor, Councilman Waring, due to the gift clause, issues, there's not a good, straightforward answer as it relates to that, because the city can't use public monies to improve someone's private property and build them a fence where there was no fence requirement when it was built, and then they just have oleanders over time, and that type of more informal kind of visual barrier, but it's not really a physical barrier. And so we don't have a good way to address that at this point, other than what Mr. Self just discussed in terms of working with volunteers and working with council offices to raise some money so that those gates could be installed privately through donations and other things, but not spending the public's money on individual private property improvements.
And please don't misunderstand me, Mayor Allen. I'm not suggesting in any way we should create an alley, a real alley, by putting in a wall. I was just wondering how, is there a gate that comes with a pole that you could stick into the ground so at least there's some barrier to entry? And we can talk about that more. But but it's not an inconsiderable issue. You know, taxpayers in my district are expecting to be included in this project as well, and we just have, you know, we don't have nearly as many alleys, except of the kind of the scenario where I'm talking about, for the most part. On another note, does anybody track like how many police calls there are to alleys? Because I would hope there would also be some cost savings involved in this. With fewer access to alleys should be fewer unfortunate incidences occurring in alleys that would require a police response. And you may not have that data, I understand, but I'd be interested in it if you do have it at some point.
Mayor and Councilman Waring, absolutely. In fact, we had a very strategic goal with our pilot program where we intended to gate the alleys and then measure the effects over time, do some before and after. Because of the wide support and from the community and the council offices, we've moved to the permanent program, but we do have a multi-department work group including fire, police, public works, neighborhood services, streets, planning and development, and we do intend to do studies to measure that effect. We don't have that data at this point, however.
Can I ask one more thing, Mayor? Again, I don't think this one will be particular to my district, but I could give you specific examples in my district because one just came up, and we've said no in the past. So we do have some tunnels under roads in different spots, or like drainage ditches, and frankly, some people stay down there and so forth. Obviously, that's got a whole lot of ramifications health-wise for them, for the community, for cleanliness and so forth. And people have asked for like gates or grates, however you want to look at it. And I think the city said no. And I don't know really, like, what's the major difference between the problems we'd be seeing in alleys and the problems we'd be seeing in the scenarios I just sketched out. We're treating those differently. So if we could go back and look at that again, I mean, if the problems are the same, it just seems like, again, that could be included in part of this program. I'd certainly like to see that. And I imagine there's probably plenty of that in other districts as well, but it's certainly been an issue in District 2.
So, Mayor, Councilman Waring, we are happy to talk to Floodplain Management Group and Streets and set up a meeting with you to talk about that in particular. I think we would have to be looking at how you keep the water flowing through those areas, and that's going to be the biggest challenge. But we can certainly talk to you about what might be able to be done to address some of those resident concerns, separately from this program.
Thank you for that. I certainly appreciate it. Yeah, I'm not suggesting a solid barrier where water is supposed to flow. That wouldn't be a particularly good idea. But, something that it's, the water can get through if there's water to be had there, or if it's just a tunnel, something to maybe prevent. I see a lot of graffiti. One that I've seen, that could be considered an issue. I don't know how you solve it because I'm not even sure who's responsible for it, but it's actually in District 3 over at Stone Creek Golf Course where you go under. There's just been, I've called in, I know personally to you, Spencer, a ton of graffiti under there. I've seen people kind of loitering under there. So I don't mean to be meddlesome, but it's one I've seen. There's also one under, it would be south of Union Hills at Cave Creek Road. There's also one at a wash at about 41st Street, just north of Thunderbird. Those are places where we've had incidences that are, frustrating to residents. And I do think that the goal of this program is the same goal as those residents. And, then they see we're paying taxes, the gates are going elsewhere because we don't really have alleys. Could we reconfigure this a little bit to include our problems as well?
Mayor, Councilman Waring, you bring up a good point, and we're happy to do some more research with Streets Department and then come talk to you about it, and then we can go from there.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman. And I think Neighborhood Services and Planning have come up with some good guides for neighborhoods about how to maintain storm infrastructure that could be helpful if we move forward with this as well. We'll go to Councilman DeCiccio next.
Thank you, Mayor. And, it's interesting listening to this debate and this discussion, how important that some people might think are small issues, but these are big issues for neighbors, and they're very impactful. I mean, sometimes we debate some big things. We think that they are big, but at the end of the day, these are the things that impact the neighbors and the people in our community more than anything. So for Councilwoman Stark and Councilwoman Guardado, thank you for all the work that you did on this. I mean, and the mayor as well. I mean, if you didn't do that, we would never be seeing this. But just a couple points. One, there is definitely a fiscal and a financial savings to the city of Phoenix. We've been trying for years to get people to, as simple as this, outside of the health and safety part of it, get people to move their garbage cans to the front. This is one way of doing that, just because it saves us a lot more money, damage, and all that with the vehicles that we take in the alleys. So there is definitely a health and safety and a financial reason why we want to do this, and we want to encourage people to do it. Second point, to Councilmember Guardado's point of these high rent areas, these high rental areas, and the difficulty of getting, notification from them back. Couldn't we just change the policy instead of saying that you have to get a certain percentage of individuals in that area? Why couldn't we just say we would, we have to get, we have to base it off of let's say 50% or 60% or whatever it is of those that have responded back, so that those individuals that have refused to respond, their vote doesn't count. No different than anything else we do. If you don't vote in any election, your vote doesn't matter. Your voice doesn't matter. Couldn't we just change that policy to those individuals that have taken the time to respond back, because we make it very easy for them to respond back? Couldn't we do that? Just change it, a simple policy change.
Mayor and Councilman DeCiccio, those are the exact questions that we've posed to our law department, as well as an opt-out versus an opt-in, percentage.
Okay, that accomplishes that. But also, maybe one of the questions, and you may have already thought of this, I mean, that is considered City of Phoenix property, correct? Well, couldn't we just gate it anyways? If it's our property, we have a legal right to gate it, correct?
Mayor, Councilman DeCiccio, public right-of-way, the city holds in public trust for all of the public. It's not city land like City Hall or other buildings that we own. And so public right-of-way has a different legal analysis with it, and that's why we've got to work with the law department about it, because there are court cases that talk about if a property owner loses access to something, the city has to pay for that. And so that's why, in this case, it's a gate that could be removed, but there's expenses that would go in to doing that, and then have to be removed. It wouldn't be a prudent use of taxpayer dollars to put it and have to remove it. So we're trying to work through those issues. And the item as put forward now gives staff the flexibility to continue to work with the law department and then discuss with you guys how flexible we can be. Because we've heard from you that you want some of that flexibility, but at the same time, we know that we want to make sure that we're using the public's money that we're doing to build these gates in a wise manner. And so we want to make sure that we get the best information from law on how we can be as flexible but not run afoul of creating an issue where a property owner can come in after the fact and say, wait a minute, I don't want this and I was never told about it, and therefore it needs to be removed. And so that's what we're working through.
Well, we can overcome the whole property owner part of that, especially on these high rental areas that Council Member Guardado has in her district, which is just crazy in some areas. I mean, the majority are by far rentals in an area, and that creates a problem on its own. We can prove, even through type of certified mail, of it getting to the owner of the property. I mean, there's many ways to do that, and that's why I think I like the idea that that you guys have come up with, is possibly do an opt-in on something like that. The other point, to Councilmember Garcia's point, and it's going to sound odd, but at the end of the day, all neighborhoods are different. So if you go in most of my neighborhoods, they're generally pretty well off, and there are other areas that there is a significant cost to some of the people that they just can't afford it. We saw that when it came down to discussion on after-school programs, where we saw a 62% drop by just raising the cost $30 every 2 months to some of the families. A 62% drop just because they couldn't afford that. So I would be open to working with any of the council members on some sort of objective standards we could create for those neighborhoods that cannot afford it, to figure out a way to cover some of that in this. I mean, I think this is a big deal when it comes to closing off neighborhoods. So if there's a way to create some type of standards that we can do a checkoff list to those neighborhoods that cannot afford it or can't come up with whatever equity it might take for them to do that, I'd be open to do and to working with staff on that and working with the council. That's all I've got, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you. Going back to how we figured the alleys and with the signatures, I know Mesa went through a process of closing all their alleys down, so I think there probably is a way, to your point, and to your point that we can do something, and maybe we should check with Mesa on that. I want to go back to the grates because Councilman Waring, it is a problem, and I don't think it's just isolated to your district and my district. I believe probably other districts are feeling the issue as well. And I did have a brief, albeit a brief, conversation with the street transportation director. And I told him my concern is now there is so much in the washes in the way of furniture and blankets that if we do have a major rain event, I think the flow of water is already being impeded. So I really would like us to research grates. I don't know if that takes a letter or if we can have all the council say, yeah, what a great idea. But I do think it's becoming more problematic, and we saw a little bit of that this summer with the rains. So just another project. Thank you.
What a great idea. Thank you. Vice Mayor.
I think that's a directive, Deb, and ask the staff to do it. And we all are sitting here and agreeing, so I think you guys understand what was asked. Transportation's not sitting here, but I think you can deliver it. What I like to say is I think we've had such a great, thoughtful dialogue on this piece. And one of the things that I had heard was it's first come, first serve, and I would really like to flip that script. And what I mean by flip it is because our poverty rate is so high. Phoenix Union's poverty rate is at 90%. So that Phoenix Union represents the majority of our feeding inner city, urban area. So instead of 100,000, I would like you to think about how you flip the script and see how some of these poverty neighborhoods are able to benefit or be able to apply in a way the first come, first serve happens because those neighborhoods are very well organized. And so I think we really need to talk about an equity piece because 100,000 won't cover our areas for that. It won't even go anywhere. So that's my suggestion. In filling the gap, maybe we have to look at the dollars and how we allocate the gates and the cost of the gates. Maybe there needs to be some buffer in there of filling the gap. Now, I don't know what the cost is because each area is different, but to be able to think that way and look that way in order to help fill the gap. The other dynamic is, and we've all had healthy dialogue over this, was those neighborhoods that are not organized. And those neighborhoods that are not organized, not to be penalized for them not being organized, because normally it's renters. And if you're a homeowner, you usually are living there, understand the dynamic that's happening, and is engaged. But a lot of the renters come and go. And so in looking at that, we have to figure out or create a mechanism where those areas do benefit from this program. And we may not necessarily have a cheerleader in that area, but we do have a responsibility for it. The other piece is, as Councilman DeCiccio mentioned, as I entered office, the conversation had already happened, but there was still some lingering conversation, was that Public Works had done a study and wanted to move trash to the front of the house. And it was supposed to be more effective and efficient, especially on our trucks. What ended up happening is in that report, it was released and people have the dialogue, but our community was not ready for that conversation. And in that conversation, it got stopped. It didn't move forward. And it didn't move forward because the community was not part of that conversation and part of that piece. I think we're at a different point in time now to really start that conversation, because it is about more efficiency, and our trucks, the wear and tear and our refurbished trucks that are falling apart need to be able to move in and out of communities right now, especially in some of the narrow alleys. And our drivers are the ones that are feeling the effects of those areas. The other thing is we have had a number of deaths within the alleys. So I think that right there should also be a dialogue as to why we need to move the trucks to the front, and then have the ability of those that want to shut their alleys can shut them. But I think this is a very holistic dialogue in order to solve many different issues that we are facing and come up with very innovative solutions and be able then to stretch our dollar the way we need to stretch it in order to help the greater community. One of the things that I'm hoping in all of this, and this is where the arts department will come into play, one of the things that I'm hoping is that the alleys get activated. And the way they get activated is if they shut the alleys, there's gated, that neighbors still have to maintain the alleys. And that's going to be one of the other key things, is educating them that they have to maintain their space. No weeds, no all this other stuff and everything. And inspectors will go out and we'll hear it, but we have to be very clear on that. But if we could activate that space within that neighborhood and be able to do what Coronado has done, their alleys are open, but to open up, to close it and be able to build neighbors or more front doors, but it's alley doors. And people open up their gates, they can put benches out there and be able then to create murals and create space for themselves. And so I think as we move towards this conversation to the future, that we are able to design that piece of community. So appreciate all the work, glad it's permanent. I do have to say that I believe District 4 was probably the first district to gate alleys. I would say that it was not legal. And it was legal in the sense that they did go through the permitting and piece, but at that time, people didn't want that. It's another space to also talk about connectivity. How do we keep the neighborhoods connected? How do we keep north, south, east, and west together and connected and be able to move throughout our city? So those are my comments. Thank you for your work.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you to Alan, Councilwoman Stark, Councilwoman Guardado, and everyone who has worked on this program. The City Council and Mayor's Office have participatory budget funds where our residents can help direct a certain portion of the funds. My Neighborhood Advisory Council has helped advise me on the funds for the Mayor's Office, and the gated alleys have been one of the popular choices. And I think that is also another tool we have to address some of the financing that we've discussed here today. It's been wonderful to talk to neighbors and hear them say it's reduced calls for service to the police department. They've seen much less activity in the alleys, and that it's been a great opportunity for them to work together with their neighbors. So I look forward to voting in favor of this.
Ansari.
Yes.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Stark.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Pastor.
Woohoo, yeah.
Gallego.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
All right. Next, we go to the Roadway Safety Action Plan. And I will welcome our Deputy City Manager, Mario Paniagua, as well as our Street Department Director down. This was originally going to be presented at a separate policy meeting. We really appreciate everyone who has worked on this for a long time. It is an issue of huge importance to the City of Phoenix. We want to have safe roadways that are welcoming for all. However, we expedited it today because we are eligible for some very important federal funds, and having a roadway safety action plan will make us even more competitive for that very important funding. We've been working on this a long time, and I think for my last 5 monthly meetings with our streets director, we've been talking about this, so I appreciate all the work and community meetings that went into it, and know that just because it is not a standalone council meeting does not mean it is not of huge importance to our city. We appreciate the passion for saving lives and improving transportation, and I will turn it over to Mario to introduce a brief presentation.
Thank you so much, Mayor and members of the council. Tragically, we continue to experience an inordinate amount of serious injuries and fatalities on our streets and roadways. Nearly every day we get reports of these kinds of accidents that affect our residents so badly. And so we really appreciate the opportunity. We appreciate the leadership of the mayor and council to direct us to put this plan together and bring forward a road safety action plan that we'll present to you very briefly here today. To my left is Kenny Knutson, Street Transportation Director, who will give a very brief overview of the plan. The item before you essentially includes 3 actions. One is to adopt the road safety action plan. Another is to form a citizens advisory committee, a Vision Zero Citizens Advisory Committee, 11-member committee that will continue to monitor the plan implementation, as well as the allocation of $10 million toward the implementation of the plan, which is a combination of multiple fund sources, one being the general fund. We would add to the current allocation of $1.8 million, another $1.2 million to get that to $3 million from the general fund, $2 million from the Transportation 2050 Fund, and $3 million from the Highway User Revenue Fund. And so all those total $10 million annually that would go to the Road Safety Action Plan. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kenny Knutson to present some slides to you on the plan.
Thank you, Mario, and thank you, Mayor and members of the council. We're happy to be here today to talk about this item. And as Mario mentioned, this was a daunting task before us as a city, and to put together a plan that was going to drive us. How do we get to 0 deaths? How do we achieve the Vision Zero resolution that was adopted by council in February? We do that by putting together an action plan that is first and foremost set up as looking at the data and input. How do we get community input as part of this process? How do we ensure that data is at the forefront of everything we do when it comes to identifying projects and investments to be able to drive our serious injuries and fatalities down to 0? Well, as part of this, when we're working through the plan with our consultant team and our city team, is we use that data input to be able to first get a lay of the land of what the serious injuries and fatalities look like in the city of Phoenix. And after that, after working through community input as well, we've then developed what we have 5 focus areas, and those are outlined in the Road Safety Action Plan that's an attachment to this item in the council. And then within each of those 5 focus areas, we have 15 objectives. So 15 objectives total across those 5 focus areas. And then as we get drive in deeper on how we're going to implement measures to be able to drive down those serious injuries and fatalities, we have 41 strategies that we have outlined within the Road Safety Action Plan that are measures that the city can take and put forth energy to be able to help achieve the goal of getting to Vision Zero. So the goals that was laid out that as part of this action plan are threefold. The first, and it's time bound, to be able to show where are we at with progress in implementing this plan, assuming it gets approved here today. Well, the first milestone there is a 25% reduction in serious injuries and fatalities on our roadways by 2027. That gives us a near-term goal to be able to focus our efforts on for the next 5 years. The next milestone there is a 2035 goal to be able to drive those serious injuries and fatalities based on the baseline number to 65% down from what it was before. And then finally, our 2050 focus is to get to 0 fatalities on our roadways by 2050. That's going to take a lot of effort, a lot of resources, and a lot of investment of time and energy, not just in our department, but across the city, working with our community and with our elected officials. And as Mario outlined, what's before you as a potential action item here is the funding. And I will hearken back to what we heard a lot in the budget hearing process back in the spring. We had a lot of members of the community who spoke out at the budget hearing to be able to provide substantial funding to the Road Safety Action Plan. We were saying as staff perspective, just give us some time. When we get to this level, we're going to propose funding levels that will be able to get us there. And what we're proposing today is $10 million a year in annual funding to be able to make a real difference in our community. And as Mario mentioned, that's $5 million of gas tax or HERF revenues, $3 million from the general fund, and that represents a $1.2 million increase from what current funding levels are, and then also $2 million from our Transportation 2050 Streets dedicated funding sources. And I would note that these are all this $10 million is something we are going to immediately look for ways within the IIJA and the federal infrastructure law to be able to leverage our local investment to do more and be able to take advantage of seeking those federal dollars, as the mayor outlined earlier. And then this is nothing but without having an organized and a comprehensive effort across our city to be able to focus in on making this a reality over the next, between now and 2050. And there's three aspects to this in making sure we have the transparency to this, but also the accountability. And the first one is we have an RSAP, Road Safety Action Plan implementation team. That is a cross-functional, interdepartmental group of city staff working daily on the implementation of this. Secondary is having an executive task force, so executive members within the city to be able to report back to, and to be able to talk to and gain guidance in the implementation of this plan. And then finally, I think most importantly, is having a Vision Zero Community Advisory Committee. And this 11-member body would be made up of members selected by each of the council members and 3 selected by the mayor. And we think this is, we've modeled and looked at this 3-tiered approach across our peer cities who have approached Vision Zero, but across the nation as well, in how people have addressed road safety action plans. And so we think this is a good, comprehensive approach, complete approach to be able to get to where we need to, working with the community, with leadership through this process. And so that concludes my presentation. I'll be more than happy, and I'm sure Mario as well, to be able to answer any questions that you might have.
And if I can just add a couple more points to the presentation. One is that Keeney mentioned the 41 strategies contained in the Road Safety Action Plan. There were actually 42 in the packet that was presented to you. One of the strategies was pulled out. The Vice Mayor mentioned a memo that was issued earlier today. That I issued with the from the Street Transportation Director that removed one of the items related to automated enforcement and red light running cameras, which will no longer be part of the strategies included in the plan. The other thing I wanted to mention is what Keeney touched on briefly, which is the funding for the bipartisan infrastructure law, which this funding will very heavily seek to leverage. So that there's another item on today's agenda that gives us the authorization to apply for the Safe Streets for All grant, which is part of that federal infrastructure bill. And so this plan adoption is necessary for us to submit that application to the Department of Transportation, which allows us to seek in this first round, in the first year of the program, $37.5 million for the total funding. So we're very excited about that opportunity to bring that funding in to address road safety for our community. So with that, I would turn it back to you, Mayor, for any questions that you or the council may have.
Wonderful, thank you. It's a great $10 million commitment today, and then the potential to continue to invest, including in partnership with the federal government. The Community Advisory Committee is also very important to me and to the successful implementation. And 2 questions for you. So we're going to approve a plan today which is important for us to be able to be competitive for federal grants and to move forward with these life-saving investments. But can the plan continue to evolve?
Mayor, members of council, of course. This is not a static plan. We would look to also update the plan periodically to make sure it's relevant to current strategies and technologies and ways to be able to improve safety on our roadways, and to respond to what we're seeing as we use performance metrics to see how effective our investments are. So there's definitely opportunity working with the Vision Zero task force, the group there, the community, the elected officials, and just working through to be able to update this periodically. So there is opportunities to be able to do that.
Wonderful. We will continue to be data-driven and try to figure out what are the most efficient and valuable ways to invest our money. And then, Kini, you are familiar with the University of Arizona Wildcats. We got outreach from the Applied Health Policy Institute there today that had some ideas about how we might invest to help pedestrians, to create more shade, bicyclists, and was wondering if you would have a chance to meet with them.
Mayor, first thing, bear down.
I did set up for that.
Yeah. So, no, we haven't met with them yet, but I think we're definitely open to having a conversation and working with them. I think their ideas are good ideas that will either be incorporated or could be incorporated within the existing strategies outlined in the plan. But also we have other efforts that may be outside, not related to our road safety action plan. We're working right now on an active transportation plan, separate from this effort. And some of those requests and those concerns there could be addressed or will be addressed through that process as well. So we're definitely open to meeting with them and talking with them. And they have some great ideas, and I think we'd like to be able to pursue that conversation further.
Wonderful. And we've already gotten some support from the federal government that will help us with better active transportation and a better experience for pedestrians and cyclists. So good momentum this year. It'll be an important year for traffic safety in Phoenix. We do have members of the public here to speak, but I will turn to my colleagues for any comments before we go to the public. Go to the public. All right, we will start in person. Cindy, if you want to go first, followed by Haley. I'm sorry not to give you more notice.
Good afternoon, Mayor Gallego, members of City Council. My name is Cindy Gahn, for the record, Senior Director of Phoenix Community Alliance, and I speak on behalf of our members and our Board of Directors. And definitely we are in favor of Vision Zero, the Road Action Safety Plan. We have been since we learned about it. Our Multimodal Connectivity Committee is very much committed to the principles and what will come of this. It's very important to note that the streets of Phoenix, and we're all aware of this, are some of the least safe and the deadliest in the country, and that's not a list that we want to be on the top of. 40% of pedestrian collisions happen in broad daylight here. It's imperative that Vision Zero and the Roadway Action Safety Plan is approved for Phoenix to qualify for the Safe Streets for All grants and leverage those federal funds that are available as well as local dollars. Super important for us. We need to make our streets safe for pedestrians and bicyclists throughout Phoenix, and our streets need to be designed now and in the future. Talk about evolving the plan, so that they're safe and comfortable whether individuals are walking or biking or scooting, or rolling, or driving on them, safe for all users. We respectfully request that you vote yes on the Vision Zero Road Action Safety Plan, and we thank you for your time and for your consideration.
Thank you. Haley is next, and then we will go to online comments with Ryan, followed by Jay.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. As you know, I've been very involved with bicycle infrastructure for a long time in Phoenix, and I was so excited about Mayor Stanton's ad hoc committee to redesign the whole bicycle master plan, which I was a part of in 2014. And I'd like to be involved with this plan more. Since COVID, meetings stopped happening and I just stopped coming, but I'm excited to get more involved with this whole plan because I'd like to help design it. I ride on these streets every day. I'm a lizard. My skin is like leather because I ride in this heat every day and I love it. And it's a part of my lifestyle. And that's exactly what it is that a lot more people are turning to this type of lifestyle, and we need to have the city infrastructure to support us. So I'd like to see new bicycle lanes coming on all new overlay projects. No matter what the street is, it needs to include a bicycle lane on both sides of the road in either direction. I'm very proud of the city for improving 3rd Avenue and 5th Avenue. That Sonoran Bikeway is coming along very nicely. But I'd also like to see all the plans that we came up with almost 10 years ago get put into play. I wonder where the gap is between the funding and the engineering and the construction of these plans that we came up with a long time ago. So I'd like to be more involved with meetings in the future, in the near future. And so I'd like to find out who to speak with. Kenny, I guess you and maybe Cindy. I just really want to help with this. So And I'm from the Westwood neighborhood, so I'd like to get in touch with Lisa Huggins Hubbard and find out if we can get our meetings back, because we haven't had meetings since COVID. So I just thank you for passing this. Keep going with it. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your more than decade of work in this area. We'll go next to Ryan, followed by Jay.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. For the record, Ryan Boyd at 1069 West Taylor Street with the Urban Phoenix Project. Also today, Annie Eldon from Phoenix Spokespeople asked me to help share her group's words. And we are both happily in support of the Vision Zero Road Safety Action Plan. We were happy that after some meetings with the Streets Department, particularly at the direction of the Vice Mayor, we ended up getting a product that is very detailed, provides a lot of great solutions from engineering best practices, and is something that we think has the bones that we can work with and try to get through. At the same time, this is an interesting environment because I've also gotten notice as of recently to bring Kieran Goff's kind of testimony to bear, because she unfortunately was involved in a collision this very day, which kind of points to the need as to why we need this project and really to get going on all of those improvements in infrastructure. One of the things is, as much as we do support the action plan, there's still a sense of anxiety among the different groups that have been involved in road safety and bicycle and pedestrian advocacy in Phoenix, that we could end up just falling into enforcement and education one-off campaigns, which all 5 E's play a role in road safety. But at the end of the day, engineering and evaluation and those kind of big concrete protections will be there 24/7, whether or not somebody remembered the lesson in their driver's education, or there was a cop there to enforce the law or other mechanisms of enforcing the law. So we are very adamant about asking for the engineering portion of this to be prioritized. And we look forward to the community committee, advisory committee, to really take that leading role and be empowered to guide the city to those holistic solutions. Thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Jay will be next, followed by Nicole.
Thank you. Jay Bieber, I'm a transportation safety researcher and a member of ITE. This is not a criticism, just a caution with regards to U.S. Limits 2 for setting speed limits in Phoenix. Traffic engineers recognize that drivers often unconsciously choose their speed based on what feels safe and comfortable considering how the road is built, not the number on the speed limit sign. Wide, smooth, straight roads with multiple lanes encourage higher operational speeds, while narrow, tree-lined neighborhood streets encourage lower operational speeds. To measure this effect, engineers measure driver speeds and then calculate the speed at which 85% of the drivers don't exceed. This is the safest and most equitable way to set speed limits because it reflects the natural speed that most people drive on the roadway and doesn't criminalize the vast majority of drivers, otherwise safe drivers. The problem with U.S. Limits 2 is that it adds extraneous factors into speed limit setting, possibly creating a mismatch between the natural speeds that the built environment encourages people to drive at and the speed limit, sort of like trying to force a square peg into a round hole. This makes roadways less safe as it can cause greater speed variation between vehicles, which causes many more accidents. Unrealistic speed limits give roadway users a false sense of security, which can lead to tragic outcomes. Mismatched speed limits subject many more drivers to police enforcement. In effect, the government builds a road that encourages drivers to feel comfortable driving at one speed, then places a lower number on the sign, and then asks the police to ticket the community for driving at the speed the road is built for. This is especially problematic in already marginalized communities. We can ill afford to exacerbate the existing problem by subjecting these communities to increased police enforcement. Making the vast majority of roadway users into scofflaws makes the job of the police more difficult, as it is harder to identify those that are truly causing danger on the roadway with excessive speeds. U.S. Limit 2 might provide a target speed for the roadway, but putting the number on the sign won't actually cause people to drive at those speeds. The only thing that works is for engineers to change the nature of the roadway so it is self-enforcing at those speeds, meaning that the built environment encourages motorists to naturally feel comfortable driving at the target speed. The city may wish to consider more research into U.S. Limits 2 before adopting its method for setting speed limits in Phoenix. Thank you for the added few seconds.
Thank you. Our final speaker will be Nicole.
Hi, this is Nicole Rodriguez. I'm a proud resident of District 4,
and I wanted to share my comments on it. I'm actually neutral when probably most thought I would be supportive of this. And the reason being is that this Vision Zero plan is comparatively weak to other cities with bold plans. The plan needs to pursue more solutions that are proven effective at reducing, if not eliminating, traffic violence and fatalities. And such solutions do not need a 10-month public comment period to be implemented. Solutions that save lives are also equate to affordable access to jobs and destinations, as well as reduce auto dependency. A strong Vision Zero plan has goals that include timelines, along with proven solutions, which it is lacking in. And we need safe streets now, and we need leadership that can deliver that. And I wanted to comment too on the public survey process. Overall, it is disingenuous when streets ask us over and over at how much do we value human life and safety over the convenience and speed of the automobile users. This is disgusting, yet it continues to be the perception of many city leaders. However, we don't ask for public comments on roadway designs that are not safe, such as road widening projects, on unethical and wasteful mill and overlay projects, on additional lanes added to intersections. So there's already inequity here in how we're reviewing this whole process of adding in a Vision Zero plan, roadway safety action plan, and any bike lanes also. I mean, let's go back to Van Buren, for instance. This type of approach needs to stop, and we do need that leadership that can deliver and make this a more equitable and affordable access for everyone, which always equates to safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
I move. Wait, I lost it. Item 35. Sorry.
I'll second.
A motion from our Vice Mayor and a second from our Transportation Chairwoman, both of whom have been working on this project. And now we will go to council comments. Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you, Mayor. No questions, just a couple of comments from me today. Very, very excited to support this plan. Thank you so much, Mario and Keeney, for all of the work that you've done on this. With Phoenix ranking 3rd nationwide for traffic fatalities, there's no question this plan is absolutely crucial. And I'm very encouraged that there is actual funding attached to it, the $10 million. I think, remembering vividly during our budget hearings, hearing what I thought was very catchy from folks who were advocating for this, that we should be spending around $5 per citizen to be able to save lives on our roads and for our bicyclists and pedestrians. And the fact that we're going a little bit above and beyond that with the $10 million today is huge. So thank you so much for putting this forward. If you also look at the list of high injury network intersections and segments, many of them occur in Estrella and Maryvale in our city. I know I have heard over and over again from residents in Maryvale and Estrella in my district, sharing fears from constituents around aggressive speeding, dangerous intersections, almost daily crashes, and lack of safe crossing intersections for pedestrians. So my hope is that we can really prioritize actions that will have the largest impact in reducing these injuries and fatalities and increasing safety and ease for pedestrians and bikers. And I'm very happy that we had some advocates here for that today. We also heard from quite a few residents and related to the suggestions that the mayor referenced that we received from the U of A and other groups. I agree that I think we should see hot crossings and shade prioritized in this plan, especially since both of these have funding. And I know, Keeney, you and I were able to speak before this, and your willingness to speak with these groups and engage with them around this is very much appreciated. I also very much appreciate that there are very specific, actionable metrics and due dates for the strategies in this plan, including installing 20 mid-block improvements per year, reducing pedestrian-related crashes that are fatal by 10% per year, and improving shade coverage at 60 transit stops per year. All of these are incredible. I look forward to seeing these metrics met. Very exciting that we're also applying for the Safer Streets for All grant, and I know that the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill have a lot of funding available to us, so excited about that. And finally, I just really want to commend our streets department, Councilwoman Stark. I know you've worked on this extensively, as well as so many of the advocacy groups who we work hand in hand with, like the Urban Phoenix Project, Phoenix Spokespeople, and U of A's Applied Health Policy Institute, for advocating and working to make this plan as strong as possible. As was previously mentioned, I know this will be, a living document. We'll continue to improve it like many of our plans, which I think is fantastic. And the community advisory piece is going to be a huge value add to track implementation. But let's also remember that the work and advocacy do not end when this plan passes. I hope anyone listening to this will remember that you can always call in and tell us what you need and what intersections or issues related to this need to be addressed in your neighborhood. Just this past year, I had a case in my district in the South Phoenix community calling for intersection improvements at 7th Avenue and Southern, and they got what they advocated for because they organized extensively around it. So just a reminder to folks to please continue to call us and tell us what you need. Thank you again for your hard work.
Thank you. Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you, Mayor. As I've said before, it seems like every day we get a message from our police liaison, Commander Osborne, tragically about a fatality, often involving pedestrians. I think the adoption of this plan is a great step. We need to make our roads safer for all, pedestrian, bikers, bicyclists, and motorists. I'm really excited about looking at this plan and getting creative. As our last speaker talked about, we need to look at narrow roads. We need to look at, my favorite, scrambles. We need to look at shaded lanes. We need to look at more hawks. So hopefully this plan will enable us to do that. Because of the adoption, it does lay the foundation for additional funding from our infrastructure bill. So I want to thank staff, especially you, Keeney. I know I've bent to your ear a lot about this plan. I know you think I want to be an engineer when I grow up, but I still want to be a planner. And I appreciate everything you did. I appreciate you listening to me. I appreciate your staff on this. I will certainly be supporting this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman, for your passion and leadership on this issue. Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. We've seen this plan for a while now. It's been developed, has a lot of community input. Glad we got it done to be able to apply for some of the federal funds. So thank you, staff, for getting this done. District 8 has 13 HIN intersections, high impact intersections. So definitely something we're excited about, worried about, and glad we're moving forward on. Can you explain what it means to have a listed project in the plan and what it means for implementation?
Certainly, Mayor, Councilmember Garcia, and members of the council. That list of projects is for us to be able to start looking at how we utilize the $10 million locally, and also looking for those leveraging opportunities with federal funds or even regional funds that we might come across. One thing that I know has been talked about for some of the speakers before was focusing on evaluation and engineering. And that later in this meeting, the item number 38, the Safe Streets for All grant that we're pursuing, $30 million of federal funds, $7.5 million of local investment. That is targeted on evaluation and engineering efforts, and those are roadway segments and corridors and intersections that are all within the HIN, the High Injury Network. And so since we've got the date coming up here, September 15th, we're working on finalizing that list, and we'll be able to provide that out to the council offices. But it does include those kind of intersections, and we've used that list, the projects we've identified in the Road Safety Action Plan, to help then drive what projects get included in the grant. So when we're doing the prioritization of those, we're looking at the data, looking at which locations we're able to prioritize based on the data that shows us, where we want to make sure if we're going to invest $1 million in a particular intersection or a roadway corridor, it's going to have the greatest benefit to reduce or eliminate serious injuries, fatalities at that location. That's our focus, because we want to make sure when we have these performance metrics, they're showing our investments are worthwhile. And so that's what it means to have those projects on there. It's going to help us prioritize projects for implementation, and that's what we're going to be using it for.
Okay, just comments on that. I think it's important to have the diversity of projects. I know I've heard ASU has a great plan downtown to have a totally pedestrian and bike corridor. So I think that and that was definitely an ASU plug for you. That, just really trying
Go
to figure
Devils.
out- That's what I was waiting for. Really just trying to be innovative. I know when we were looking at the different intersections, not every solution is going to fit in each place. And so I think looking at different solutions for different situations. I also want to make sure to ask you all to focus our efforts in the engineering, evaluation, and equity portions of the plan, rather than just relying on enforcement. I think the enforcement measures were listed as the only projects that have high amount of additional staff. What can we do to make sure that there is an adequate staffing for evaluation and engineering in the portions of the plan? Unfortunately, I think enforcement a lot of time comes after, and so I think it's really important for us to focus on these other pieces. So how was that decision made, and then what can we do to focus more on the engineering and evaluation piece?
Mayor, Councilmember Garcia, members of the council, you bring up a great point, that the money that's being allocated, the resources being allocated, our first efforts are going to be on evaluation and engineering, probably with an education component as well. When we start talking about some of the enforcement strategies that are within here, I think a lot of those are going to require additional conversations with the council, other city staff, other departments, to see what's achievable, because there will likely be additional allocation of resources, as you mentioned, to do that. So I think that's something we will, working within the Vision Zero task force, and as we look at opportunities to be able to, increase our efforts across all our 5 E's of traffic safety, I think that is one particularly that it will take a lot more coordination to work through the enforcement ones, but I know that the evaluation engineering from a street transportation department perspective is a lot easier for us. That's because that's where we live, and doing those things. But I will just say, any of those things that revolve on enforcement, those are going to take a lot more coordination and work and conversation with the council.
Okay. And then last thing, with the task force, I know we have task force for a lot of different things, some more active, some more into implementation. How do you picture this task force being involved? What kind of decisions or what kind of conversations, or what are you going to be tapping them to do?
Mayor, Councilmember Garcia, members of the council, the Vision Zero task force is utilized in different ways across the country in different agencies. How I envision right now is the first thing is from a transparency and accountability perspective. As we look to implement this plan, we're going to be working with them on how we're implementing the projects we're implementing, and then using the performance metrics to be able to see whether the investments we made had the intended benefit of reducing or eliminating the serious injuries, fatalities at that location, or what we were trying to address. And that's the part we want, that feedback, that dialogue with the community, because it can't just be a bunch of city staff working on this. We have to be in concert with the community, and I think that gives us that ability to have that dialogue. They can hold us accountable. They can make recommendations and advice as we go through this, and hey, we need to focus on this strategy, or we think we ought to spend more resources in this area. And that's a kind of a collaborative, comprehensive effort that we're going to work across those 3 bodies of the Vision Zero task force throughout this process.
And Councilman Garcia, I would also add to that just that we see this Citizens Advisory Committee as also an avenue for the council to get input from a group of experts that are involved in this each day, that are part of the community, and can give input to the council and give you advisement or recommendations on policy actions related to this plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman DeCiccio.
Thank you, Mayor, and I thank everybody that worked on this. I know it was difficult, and like anything else, it's a plan. Then the implementation takes the time to get it through, right? One of the points I'd like to bring up, again, you've heard me say this before, it's that low-hanging fruit that we should be really going after right away. One of the points, if you look at certain parts of our city, we seem to be getting more accidents in that area, more pedestrian deaths, more pedestrian injuries, those types of things. And I like the idea of your focus, and I think Councilmember Yansari brought it up. I was about to call her first name, but I know being formal here, right? So the prioritization of some of these areas. Some of these areas are not organized, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't look at just those that are organized. We should look at those areas that have had the highest impact, the ones we can have the change. The mid-block lighting, Councilmember Guardado and I have talked about that relentlessly. There's certain parts of Phoenix that just aren't treated the same. Not because of the way it is, now, it's the way it was in the past. They just didn't have the lighting in there. Those are the areas we need to really have an impact on. The mid-block crossers, I don't think we're ever going to stop individuals who want to cross a street in the middle of a mid-block, but we can make it safer for them to do that. It's inevitable that they're going to do that. People are going to find the easiest path to do whatever it is that they need to do. But if there's not enough lighting out there, they're going to have some difficulty crossing that street. They're just going to do that, and you're just not going to see them. The other issue that we're going to be talking about in December is the yellow lights, extending the yellow lights. I consider that to be low-hanging fruit. I know there's some concerns that it might slow down traffic quite a bit, but I think it's a safety issue. It's a health and safety. It's non-political. For me, it is clearly, I am convinced that it works. I mean, other cities have adopted it and they've made it work. I'd like to see us, I can't wait for that report to come back in December to see where we're at on that. Even my kids, who just started driving, so it's a scary thought. Once your kids, Kate, or Mayor, I should say, when you see your kids driving, it's just, you're handing them a key and you're like, oh my goodness, But it happens. They just have to be able to get in there, and that shows that level of independence. So even they have remarked at how fast some of the lights are and how quick you have to react to stop, especially if you don't have a really good ability for time and distance. And a lot of individuals don't. I'm noticing that because I watch my kids. And they just don't have the ability to visualize and see what time and distance does and how fast somebody is going. So the yellow light allows them to make, if there was an extended time, it allows them to make those decisions a lot easier than having to make quick decisions, especially for those new drivers that are out there. And even drivers that have been around for a long time, seniors, have a harder time to measuring time and distance. So there's a lot of reasons why I like the yellow lights, but I'm going to be voting for this, Mayor. I don't like the name. You've heard me say that before, but the components of this, I think, long-term are good for the city of Phoenix. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. A very important policy for the city. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I would like to thank all of the community that has been working on this for many years and have many plans that have not been implemented. And so I guess where I'm at is it's great that this intent is really to apply for additional dollars and be able to help us get on a roadmap. However, there are plans that have already been built, and how are those plans going to be incorporated with this conversation with this community advisory committee? Because I don't want to start spinning the wheel again.
Mayor, Vice Mayor Pastor, members of council, I think as we look at, I think right now we're looking at the Road Safety Action Plan as being a focus effort for the city, and when we're looking to implement projects out of there, as we see any plans that may be in conflict or not closely coordinated with those, we'll work through those individually as we see those develop. If there's any specific plan that you'd like us to focus in for that, we can get back to you on that and look at it. But right, I don't know if anything else you want to say, Mark.
So I believe Councilwoman Williams, I can't remember the committee I sat on, but she had made a request by staff to get all the plans and incorporate all the plans, because we had a bike plan, a pedestrian plan, a downtown plan, a city plan, and there was a directive and an effort to look at, to stack those plans and see where the common piece was, and then see where some of the outside and the outliers. So where is that plan, and how will you incorporate it or use it with also Vision Zero?
Vice Mayor, in terms of the broader plan, I think that's something that's an effort that's ongoing for the city of Phoenix, just as we continue to adopt any new plan like this one. We want to make 100% sure that it's coordinated with the existing plans. One example that comes to mind is the active transportation plan that the Streets Department also puts in place, and they're actually updating as we speak. So there's, as you would imagine, there's going to be some overlap in the types of projects in the active transportation plan, which is focused on adding infrastructure for bicycle lanes and those kinds of active transportation modes, which can also support road safety. And so we're going to make sure that those are coordinated but also distinct, so that the measures within the active transportation plan aren't going to be the same as those, and certainly not conflict with what's in the road safety plan. And so that's just something that's going to be an ongoing effort for staff to make sure that our plans do coordinate, that they are kind of synergistic and work together to accomplish our goals.
And I'm asking these questions for the public because they emailed me. So I'm asking these questions for those, I'm putting it on the record, for the public, because the public has been asking me. I happened, unfortunately, to have District 4 is the center and the heart of the city, and also has the greatest accidents, tragedies, and mid-block pedestrian, you name it, I have it. And so I'm asking because they're the advocates that come to me and then sit on these plans that then don't get implemented. And so I want to be very clear as we vote for this plan that some of those items are, in a bigger aspect, I guess is what I'm saying, can be implemented and paid for. So that's just my comment. My question is, where did the $10 million come from?
So, and Keeney can add to this, but essentially it's, as we said, it's a combination of fund sources, which helps us achieve that leveraging of the dollars. So the $5 million from the Highway User Revenue Fund, $2 million from Transportation 2050, and then the general fund piece of it, the additional amount is $1.2 million. The council already has allocated $1.8 million each year. And so this is an addition to that. And so the Street Transportation Department, City Manager's Office, and Budget and Research Department all work together to identify funding in these areas. The HERF Fund, for example, and T2050 have seen some higher fund balances because of additional collections. And so those are some opportunities for us to allocate those dollars to implementing these roadway safety measures.
So am I hearing from cost savings, we got the $10 million?
Cost savings as well as additional revenue in those areas.
Okay, thank you. The $5 million of HERF, I think we call it a HERF, or is it a HERF, or I don't know what it's called.
We sometimes call it AHER, Arizona Highway User Revenue. Yeah.
Okay, so that's what we call it internally, right? Which is the $5 million of HERF money.
Right.
Okay. I'm just hoping that when we dedicate this money, that money goes to the dedication and not to other projects that then we're short on, or that we're adding. I'm going to give you an example, light rail. When we go over cost, that we start using other dollars that have been allocated or dedicated to a project, then gets sucked into that because we need to finish the project. So I just want to put caution to all that because there's an expectation by the community that this will happen. Keeney, you mentioned the Community Advisory Committee is going to keep you accountable. How is this advisory group going to keep you accountable?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Pastor, and members of the council, because working with the community through this, we'll be making presentations to them about our progress in implementing the Road Safety Action Plan. And then they are, in a sense, an advisory body, and obviously being appointed by the council, we would be responding to them and their concerns about how we're implementing it and any advice they may have. So I look at it as being as important as a lot of other advisory bodies. I know we work very closely with the Citizens Transportation Commission, who is also an advisory body on the expenditure of Transportation 2050 funds. I think this is, I would look at this Vision Zero Community Advisory Committee being similar to that and helping us guide our implementation.
Okay, and then I have one more question. You said a conversation with council. Vision Zero has been a conversation within our community, within our committee, and have talked about it. And we discussed it in our committee. However, we would discuss it in our committee, and then time goes by, and then we have other things that we're doing. I would like to see these type of what's placed in the packet when you come and visit us. I would like to see that information ahead of time to then be able then to react what's going to be presented. I don't want to be in the situation that I was in this morning and looking at certain pieces of this plan and then reacting to it. So I would like to be briefed in it and not be briefed as to it was on the agenda, I mentioned Vision Zero, and that's what I did. I like to actually have a dialogue and conversation regarding the plan, so I can say, I don't agree with this, I disagree with this, why is this in here, is this part of what the standards are? So then I can ask my 21 questions and not be in a place where I feel like staff hasn't prepped me for this bigger dialogue. So I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilman Waring.
Thank you. So if you look at the map on page, it's either 10 or 116, or it was 116 and page 10. It's got two different numbers on it. I think you know what I mean. About the map of the city. It's pretty clear as you look at that map that highlights the most dangerous intersections, the most dangerous segments. So you've got the map. So it's pretty clear that Districts 1 and Districts 2 have the least, by far, except for maybe Ahwatukee, dangerous intersections and segments. I think that's a fair statement. I don't think people at home can see the map, but I think that's a fair. Again, have a concern, not totally unlike the gated alley discussion earlier, that resources are going to be primarily directed to other areas, and I understand why. You got some really dangerous intersections in the rest of the city, but that doesn't mean all is happiness and sunshine on the roads in District 2. I'll let Ann speak for District 1, but I'm sure it's the same there. You're still seeing a lot of really extreme behavior, and so I think partially to Laura's point, I would certainly hope that you would come and say, hey, here's some ideas we have for District 2. You don't have the most dangerous intersections, but here's what you do have that maybe wasn't highlighted on the map. That's something I personally would like to see. I think that's only fair. I'm also not suggesting redirect resources from places where it's extremely dangerous to places where it's not so bad. But this needs to be, the needs of each area of the city are not necessarily the same. So that is a specific request I have. Second, I know Sal's given examples, I certainly have too. I've been doing nothing but driving this year. I basically live out of my car. The crazy pedestrian behavior I've seen, it is unbelievable. If you're driving anywhere in Phoenix, if you just want some helpful life advice, be looking for a pedestrian, no matter how unlikely it might seem that they'll be there. Because there isn't almost a day go by where I don't see somebody out in the middle of a major street kind of just walking along. It's just a matter of course now. I can't drive Tatum without basically seeing it, it seems like. Bell Road, same thing. People out in the medians, people just kind of walking along, walking across. I mean, it's a minor miracle as far as I'm concerned that there aren't more fatalities than there actually are, and I don't say that lightly. It's just, if you drive enough, you're going to see really serious situations. I know what Sal said is undoubtedly true. You're not going to get that down to zero. Are there barriers or anything we can put up in trouble spots? Because the person who might just sort of amble across the street where there's only a curb might not do that if they had to drive like I'm envisioning where we have construction, well, right outside our building here, where you have sort of barriers saying, hey, don't cross here, and so forth. I don't know how expensive that stuff is. I'm assuming at least somewhat expensive. But there might be a real hesitation to hop across something like that, particularly if you have, groceries or something, because I understand people don't want to walk to the light, but it's just a terrible, It's just a terrible thing that I see all the time, and I'm always shocked. Things aren't worse than they actually are. The driving is no better. Plenty of blame to go around. But the ultimate answer, I think, to all of this is get more motor officers out there, enforcing the traffic laws, and then also citing people where appropriate for engaging in extremely dangerous behavior. I have occasion to drive across both Indian School and Thomas quite frequently. I mean, I'm the driver, and I'm scared to death that I'm going to hit somebody because I see people just crossing against the lights. I'm talking rush hour traffic. So I guess that's something I'd like to see explored. I do have concerns, there's lots of money of planning here, but to like redo an intersection to try to make it more safe, the sight lines and so forth, Keeney, how much does something like that cost? Like even one intersection?
Mayor, Councilmember Waring, members of the council, typically you're looking at it probably, we budget around $1 million for looking at an intersection rebuild, because it's not just about the traffic signals and modernizing the traffic signals. There's things that you mentioned, removing visibility obstructions, looking at lighting, and different things that we might be able to do to make this intersection safer, like removing negative offsets of the left turning movements in traffic. But going back to your previous question, Councilman Waring, or your comment about the allocation of resources, I would note that as we look at the high injury network, that's a snapshot in time. And as we go through, this is between now and 2050 is what we're going to be working on getting to this point. And so our data analysis will continue to collect those. And just because districts 1 and 2 may not have the highest, intersections or roadway corridors and the HIN or the high injury network, it doesn't mean that 5 years from now that isn't different as additional growth happens in different areas of the valley. And that's the whole idea, the beauty of this process is it's a iterative process to be able to continue to look at data to see where our worst areas are, to make sure we're investing our resources there. And even if they are not on the high injury network, which is the funding we have focused here, the $10 million is really about reducing serious injuries and fatalities on a roadway. It doesn't mean we don't have other programs within our department that are looking at being able to do roadway improvements or Hawk intersection improvements that aren't necessarily related to the spending of the road safety action plan monies. So we do have resources still dedicated that may not be directed towards the HIN, but able to address some of the concerns you have.
And thank you for that. And it's a good point. Growth can change the dynamic. What I remember of our discussion, I actually think it was pre-COVID, so it's been a while. I didn't see that, unless I missed it, in this packet, but you had, I think, the top 100 worst MAG-rated intersection. I think it was MAG who did that. And I don't think any of them were even, as I recall, there wasn't even anyone even close to District 2 that was a bad intersection. But at $1 million an intersection, I think we have 1,100 signalized intersections. Isn't that what you've told me in the past?
1,200.
1,200. Sorry, 1,200. I don't want to make your empire smaller. Keeney, apologize. You do the math. We're a long way from having the money to redo intersections, retime all the lights. So that's definitely a concern that, there are going to be a lot done other parts of the city and then none done, again, in District 2, where, again, you see all kinds of extreme driving behavior coupled with, people out in the streets, certainly very concerning. So that's something that I would hope that we can work on address. You make the point about other roadway improvements apart from this. We get a lot of requests in my area for stoplights, and the city doesn't, unless a developer is pitching in, and we've certainly worked with developers where there are new homes going in or something, hey, you got to put in a stoplight. They're expensive. They've gotten way more expensive as the cost of materials and hiring contractors and stuff to do it has gone up. But certainly, I really would like to revisit that because I think a lot of citizens have really meritorious claims of putting in either Hawks or I'm more partial to the actual stoplight because we do have development. So you have more people, and you do have people driving faster because they know they're not going to get pulled over. We've been going through this and again, it would seem crazy if it wasn't the times we live in, people driving through walls. Keeney, you and I have had occasion to either go out or certainly much discuss people going through intersections, and I'm not kidding, people who are watching at home, just driving into major walls. There's only so much signage you can put up that's going to stop somebody from just driving into a condo complex. multiple times, actually, where we've had to reconfigure roads to make, I guess, a simple turn even simpler so people don't just drive through big stone walls. With that as a backdrop, my expectations for driving behavior are low, but anything we can do to give citizens some peace of mind with stoplights or, and I don't know that we really do those, but flashing like, hey, there's a turn ahead. Another sort of, I guess, either pet peeve or bugaboo of mine on Friday, and I do compliment your staff. So we got a call from a Phoenix fire captain about the intersection at Pinnacle and Tatum. So I actually drove out there to see it myself. It's not a corner where I would normally make the turn that this fellow was making every day. He's like, it's just dangerous, the sight lines, the way it bends, coming south on Tatum, for anybody who's been there. There's a lot of weeds and state trust land and so forth. Boy, was he right. I mean, you couldn't see between the curve. The people coming south can't see you when you're making your right turn, and you can't see them because of the weeds. So you immediately had a crew out there, probably within a couple hours, because they came. I saw them when I was out there. I really appreciate that very much because I'm surprised there hadn't been more accidents than there had already been. But not just like weeds, but just generally plants and so forth, it always sort of stuns me how much of that stuff, and I don't know how much of it is ours and how much might be, the gas station on the corner that wanted to plant some nice trees or something, where you make it really hard to make a turn. And I know we've called your office a lot of times to, citizens have complained, HOAs have complained, hey, could you trim back these bushes and so forth. But a real focus on that, I think, can definitely save some lives, which is the goal of this program, at a relatively inexpensive cost. It's a lot cheaper to trim some bushes than it is to redo a whole intersection. I'm not saying redo a whole intersection somewhere else in the city. I'm just saying you can bang for the buck. You might be able to solve a lot of problems by just the basic maintenance. We also had, I was out door knocking and a fella complained about bushes along 12th Street going north from basically the 101 or the frontage road. He was right. I knew he was right because I had made that turn, and all of a sudden there was a truck right on top of me. I'm like, man, I got to pay more attention. And I realized there was a bush just completely destroyed your sight line, but it wasn't that obvious, and it's a straightaway, so people are speeding. That bush is in somebody's yard. So I think there were 3 bushes that you guys found out there. But fast action on stuff like that can also make a big difference at a relatively low impact cost. And I would definitely suggest some of these bushes, and I know I've called some in and you guys have always responded really quickly, just removing the things. They're not pretty enough to justify, the potential cost. Because if you drive enough, it really makes it hard to, you're nervous making any kind of turn. And I could give you probably dozens of examples just from personal experience. I'm just looking for ways that you can spread out your money or maybe use existing programs and then focus this on something else that might really help. And I appreciate you hearing me out. Thank you. And one thing, this does not include like red light cameras and stuff, correct? That was removed. We're going to have it as discussion.
No, it does not. Okay. And that goes to the strategy that Mario mentioned was removed from the final action or the packet today. I would also mention, Councilman, that when you talk about the different strategies or different ways to be able to address an issue, I think that's part of this comprehensive approach. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to go to the most capital-intensive type of improvement to address a serious injury or fatality issue. It might be a visibility issue with vegetation that it's just we need to take care of that. It could be just as simple as that, or it could be much more complex. And that's the idea of being able to use the data behind there to see what's actually happening at the location and then figure out what's the right countermeasure to be able to address that and make it safer.
And if you've got stretches, Mayor Keeney, if you've got stretches where people are crossing, I know you can't do all of Thomas and all of Indian School or something with some kind of barriers, but the reason barriers were invented, the word barrier, to try to stop people from doing it, I really think that might really help to the extent it's possible. It probably doesn't have to be anything elaborate. It probably doesn't have to be anything heavy, but it might be really effective. So thank you. I appreciate you indulging me, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Waring. Councilwoman Guardado.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just also want to thank staff for all of their hard work on this plan. I know we've been talking about this for a minute now, but I also wanted to thank Councilmember DeCiccio for his support on this plan and always pushing to making sure that we're making decisions based on data and that we are making the right decisions. Also want to thank Kini for all of your hard work as well on this plan, and I'm hopeful that we will get to a good resolution and we'll get going on this plan and we'll figure out all the issues that we have going on in the city. I know D5 has the deadliest intersection, and I like it when we're number one, but not on this. So definitely looking forward to all the work that you guys are going to do on that, and I will be voting yes on this.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councilwoman. We are on the roadway to improvement. We're going to work hard to make sure this is a great city for pedestrians, bicyclists, people who travel by car. I'm also hoping that with our timing, we will have a very safe Super Bowl coming up as well. So very exciting. Thanks all for your work. Roll call.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Stark.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Pastor.
Woohoo, yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
By a unanimous vote, we passed our roadway safety action plan. Great news. Thank you to our staff. Next is item 36, text amendments to Phoenix City Code, Chapter 5A. Will the city clerk please read the title?
Hang on. I made a mistake. I believe I have to read into motion as of the amended.
Vice Mayor, you did that at the beginning, so I think we're
Okay,
covered.
I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to make sure.
Appreciate you
Okay, thank
checking.
you.
All right, now we'll put the city clerk to work.
Item 36 is Ordinance G7028, an ordinance amending Chapter 5A Industrial Gas Pipeline License, Sections 5A-3, 5A-5, 5A-6, 5A-8, 5A-9, 5A-12, 5A-13, 5A-17, 5A-18, 5A-20, 5A-21, 5A-27, 5A-28, and 5A-39.
Nicely done. Vice Mayor, do we have a motion?
I think so. I move item 36.
Second.
Any comments? Roll call.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Stark.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Pastor.
Another 9-0, yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
We next move to item 37, an IGA with McDOT to improve Southern Avenue from 51st Avenue to 37th Lane. And I'll turn to Councilwoman Ansari for a motion.
Thank you. I move to approve item 37.
Second.
Thanks. I just wanted to pull this item. It's related also as well to the conversation we just had about roadway safety. A few months ago, I had a town hall in the Estrella region of the district, which is about 30 blocks west of this segment of road that we're talking about, and quite a few residents brought up the dangerous and stressful environment that scalloped roads create for drivers and pedestrians alike. For those who might not be familiar with the term, just to clarify, a scalloped road is when a road switches from greater to fewer lanes multiple times, and where sidewalks may start and stop because ownership belongs to different government entities, so the city versus the county. So I'm very supportive of this IGA, and I want to make sure that we're accelerating improvements like this through West Phoenix. And I don't want to make anyone come down for questions right now, but just wanted to generally ask later beyond this meeting if we could see a list of scallop roads and a timeline for when we hope to make similar agreements to address them, because I know this is definitely not the only stretch in the city of Phoenix. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very excited to see this move forward. This is an area where people often provide comments to the city, even if it's McDOT's project, and I'm glad we're working together to address. Any additional comments? Roll call.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Stark.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Pastor.
Congrats, yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Continuing with our Safe Streets theme for this council meeting, item 38, Safe Streets grant application.
I'd like to move item 38.
Second.
We have two members of the public here to comment on this item. We'll switch it up and go Moira and then Cindy, unless, or we're, all right, Cindy, your tradition of going first will continue.
I initially asked to speak on this, but I just put in a comment. I didn't need to speak unless necessary, so just asking that you, Mayor and Council, approve this item because it would maximize our funding. Thank you very much.
Well said. So this is the item to apply for bipartisan infrastructure law funding. Roll call.
Ansari.
Yes.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Stark.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Pastor.
Woohoo! 9-0, yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
9-0.
Wonderful. Now we go to the planning and zoning portion of our council meeting agenda. We will welcome our Deputy City Manager, Alan Stevenson, up to the podium. We will begin with an item in District 1, item 64, the southwest corner of I-17 and Pinnacle Peak Road. And Alan, if you will start us off with a brief staff report.
Thank you, Mayor and members of Council. Josh Bednarik is going to walk us through quickly on a couple of these items. We do have PowerPoint presentation, but I don't believe we need them because we don't have any substantive concerns about these projects, but if the Council wants, please let us know. Josh, go ahead.
Thank you, Alan. Mayor, members of the Council, items 64 and 65 are public hearings for companion general plan amendment and rezoning cases and can be heard together but will require separate actions. The subject property for both requests is 24.19 acres located near the southwest corner of I-17 and Pinnacle Peak Road in Council District 1. Item 64 is GPA DV-1-22-1, a request to amend the general plan land use map to residential 15-plus dwelling units per acre to allow for multifamily residential. Item 65 is Z30-22-1, a request to rezone the same site from a variety of zoning districts within the Deer Valley Airport Overlay District to R3A DVAO to allow multifamily residential. The Deer Valley VPC recommended approval of both requests by a vote of 7-4 on July 14th. The Planning Commission recommended approval of both requests by a vote of 9-0 on August 4th. Staff recommends approval of item 64 per the Planning Commission recommendation and adoption of the related resolution. Staff recommends approval of item 65 per the Planning Commission recommendation and adoption of the related ordinance. Mayor, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Open the public hearing. We do not have any members of the public to testify. Close the public hearing. I will turn to Councilwoman O'Brien, who represents the area, and it could be a motion on 64 and 65. No, I'm sorry, one at a time.
I move to approve per the Planning Commission recommendation and the related resolution, item 64.
Second.
Any comments? Praise. Roll call.
Ansari.
Yes.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Stark.
Yes.
Waring. Pastor.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
Passes 8-0.
Okay, good.
65.
I move to approve per the Planning Commission recommendation and adopt the related ordinance for item 65.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Ansari.
Yes.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Stark.
Yes.
Waring. Pastor.
Got it, O'Brien, yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
Passes 8-0.
We next move to item 66, which is a text amendment, and good news from my perspective. Brief staff report.
Mayor, item 66 is ZTA 2-22-6, a text amendment to the historic Canal Side Overlay District located at the northeast corner of Central Avenue and Butler Drive in Council District 6. The request is to amend the permitted accessory and prohibited use list of the overlay district to allow packaged liquor retail and general retail sales as an accessory use to a restaurant to allow for a Little O's. The North Mountain Village Planning Committee recommended approval by a 12-0 vote on July 20th. The Planning Commission recommended approval by a 9-0 vote on August 4th. Staff recommends approval of item 66 per the Planning Commission recommendation and adoption of the related ordinance. Mayor, happy to answer any questions.
Wonderful, thank you. It's very exciting that we're using our canals as even more of an amenity. Question? All right, we're going to have another brief public hearing. Open the public hearing. We don't have any members of the public to comment. Close the public hearing. Councilman DeCiccio.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve per the Planning Commission recommendation and adopt the related ordinance. Did I do okay, Deb?
I want to second it.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I want to steal it into District 3 someday.
And what I mentioned to her earlier, too, is I said, hey, I'll be gone next year, so you'll be able to take whatever you want out of my district at that point. I won't have any say. Thanks, Mayor.
We will. Perhaps we'll have to celebrate this ordinance, a text amendment at a location. Roll call.
Ansari.
Yes.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Stark.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
All right. We will then go to 67 and 68, which are related items. 67th Avenue and Rozier Road alignment we will hear together. Brief staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. The subject property for both requests is 85.9 acres located in the northeast corner of 67th Avenue and Rozier Road alignment in Council District 7. The requests are seen as an implementation of the city's efforts related to the Rio Reimagine project. Item 67 is GPA EST-1-22-7, a request to modify the general plan land use map to commercial. Item 68 is Z31-22-7, a request to rezone the site to C2 to allow for a mix of uses from commercial, office, retail, and multifamily residential. The Planning Commission recommended approval of both requests by 9-0 vote on August 4th. Staff recommends approval of item 67 per the Planning Commission recommendation and adoption of the related resolution. Staff recommends approval of item 68 per the Planning Commission recommendation and adoption of the related ordinance. Mayor, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councilman Ansari, any questions?
Yes, I do have a question for Alan or Josh. Obviously, I understand this rezoning is being brought before us because it is due to be bought as part of the State Route 30 project by ADOT. I know you are well aware that a couple of years ago, many members of the community were brought together around with our Parks Department to create a case study for the ideal public benefit as part of Rio Reimagined. I do just want to put on the record that obviously it is my office's priority that whatever funds the city receives from the future sale of this property goes directly back to the community in the form of a public benefit, especially for recreational space, and the fact that the expertise of the community was utilized and countless hours were spent without ultimately seeing the results of their work come to fruition. So this question is for Alan, just so it's on the record. Would it be possible for your team to look into where the funds from the original sale of this plot came from, and if the profits from the sale could be earmarked for community benefits in this area?
Mayor, Councilwoman Ansari, yes. We will work with the Parks Department and the Finance Department to ascertain where the funding came from to purchase that land so that we can make sure that we can advise you and the rest of the council exactly what those funds are eligible to be used for and have that discussion with you. And then in a week or two, the item will come back to have a council discussion about the authorizing the sale of the land, and we'll talk about that with you beforehand, but that way the council will have all that information. By way of example, there could have been impact fee monies used to purchase that land, and so that money would have to go back to the impact fee program, could be used then for recreational purposes under the impact fee program within the Estrella area, but it's got to be specific to where that money came from first, and we'll advise the council of all that.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I look forward to seeing progress on this in a couple weeks. And with that, I will make a motion to...
Give me 1 second to do a very brief public hearing, but I actually have one question, which if you could just give me 2 sentences. There will be some stipulations that anyone who would buy this property would have to deal with related to Rio Reimagined. So like in 2 sentences, what are those?
Mayor, members of the council, there are stipulations requiring general conformance to a concept plan that will provide for pedestrian connectivity to and from the Rio Salado, a trail on 67th Avenue, and a minimum amount of open space provided on site, in line with the EPA workshop that was held several years ago.
Wonderful, and appreciate all who participated in that process. One of the things this council did as part of our budget was create a planning position related to Rio. Enrique, thank you for the work on this. It's been very important, and I think this is going to end up being a banner year for movement towards the vision on Rio, and perhaps continuing on the same thing, Vice Mayor.
I want to make sure Rio Reimagine is protected. We put a lot of work and a lot of money in that space, and in whatever we're doing, it's protected and they follow all the guidelines that need to happen.
Vice Mayor, if I may, the stipulation also requires that ultimately whoever does come forward to develop it has to go through the public hearing process. So the Astoria Village Planning Committee, Planning Commission, and you as the council will have an opportunity to review and ultimately provide final approval on the final development plan.
Thank you. Important comment from the Vice Mayor. Open the public hearing. We do not have any members of the public to comment. Close the public hearing, and now I will turn to Councilwoman Ansari.
Great. Motion to approve item 67 per the Planning Commission recommendation and adopt the related resolution.
Second.
Roll call.
Ansari.
Yes.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Stark.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
All right. I'm sorry, we did 68, and we have not done 68. 68, Councilwoman Ansari.
Motion to approve item 68 per the Planning Commission recommendation and adopt the related ordinance.
Second.
Any comments? Roll call.
Ansari.
Yes.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Stark.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Wonderful. Next, we go to items 69 and 70, which are related items at the southwest corner of 48th Street and Washington Street. And we will begin with a brief staff report, and then I actually have a question for our aviation director if he could make his way during this staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 69 is GPA CE 2-21-8, a request to amend the general plan land use map for the site to mixed use to allow for multifamily residential. Item 70 is Z64-21-8, a request to rezone the site to a planned unit development to allow multifamily residential. The Camelback East VPC recommended approval of both requests by a vote of 16-0 on June 7th. The Planning Commission recommended approval of both requests by a vote of 9-0 on August 4th. Staff recommends approval of item 69 per the Planning Commission recommendation and adoption of the related resolution. Staff recommends approval of item 70 per the Planning Commission recommendation and adoption of the related ordinance. Happy to answer any questions.
Wonderful, and I, again, do have one question for our aviation director. So given the attention to residential development around Sky Harbor, would you explain the difference between this development and its companion case and others we have discussed?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. First, more broadly, I'd just like to say that in 2021, it was a banner year at Sky Harbor Airport. We had just over 400,000 takeoffs and landings at Sky Harbor on a 3,000-acre campus, and that notably makes us the 8th busiest airport in the world for takeoffs and landings. And actually, we are the busiest three-runway airport in the world for takeoffs and landings. So that's a pretty remarkable thing to do on such a small footprint. So with that in mind, it's really important that we carefully analyze any changes to land uses adjacent to the airport to ensure that they're compatible with the ongoing operation of our airport system so we can continue to grow it to support the growing needs of our community. Specific to this case, we look to try to be as permissive as possible, either within the city or within our neighboring communities, to ensure that we are doing what we can to allow land uses that are developed in a way that can be compatible with the airport's operation. And in this specific case, what's really notable and unique about it is that it does not sit directly underneath our flight paths. So that was one of the first things that we looked at. The second thing is it does not sit within our current high-impact noise contour or our 65 DNL noise contour. Had it sat within that 65 DNL noise contour, I would be here today recommending opposition to this case. But that is not the case here, and so what we've done is we've asked for a couple of stipulations be entered into the record. That includes making sure that residents who would potentially live there are notified, obviously, of the ongoing operation of the airport and the proximity of this development to the airport. We want to make sure that the building is constructed in such a way that it's compatible with airport operations, and so it has to get an FAA notice of no hazard determination. So the applicant will need to apply with the FAA and get that approval. And thirdly, we are requiring that through a stipulation that there would be an avigation easement that would indemnify the airport and ongoing airport operations as it relates to this parcel. And we're satisfied with that, Mayor.
Wonderful, thank you. The airport is our top economic engine, and we need to protect it, so appreciate that. Do any of my colleagues have questions before we open the public hearing? Open the public hearing. We do have Mr. Nick Wood available to speak if necessary. Does anyone have questions for Mr. Wood? Close the public hearing, and then I will turn to Councilmember Garcia.
Motion to approve per the Planning Commission recommendation and adopt the related resolution. That was item 69.
Second.
Roll call.
Ansari.
Yes.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Guardado. O'Brien.
Yes.
Stark.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Item 70, Councilmember Garcia.
Motion to approve item 70 per the Planning Commission recommendation and adopt the related ordinance.
Second.
Roll call.
Ansari.
Yes.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Stark.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. We stay in District 8 at the southwest corner of 43rd Avenue and Baseline Road. It will be two related items, 71 and 72. Staff report.
Mayor, item 71 is GPA LV-1-22-8, a request to amend the general plan land use map to commercial. Item 72 is Z25-22-8, a request to rezone the site to a planned unit development to allow a veterinary hospital and commercial uses. The Levine Village Planning Committee recommended approval of both requests by 8-0 votes on June 11th. The Planning Commission recommended approval of both requests by a vote of 9-0 on August 4th. Staff recommends approval of item 71 per the Planning Commission recommendation and adoption of the related resolution. Staff recommends approval of item 72 per the Planning Commission recommendation and adoption of the related ordinance. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? We will open the public hearing. We do have one comment from Mark Rodriguez. Mark, the floor is yours.
Hello, Mayor Kate Gallego and members of the Phoenix City Council and Vice Mayor Pastor. How you are doing today? It's good to hear from all of you guys again. It's because I live in the Baseline area where I always go to 43rd Street and Baseline where the two schools, the Cesar Chavez High School and all the other schools that they have, and you're building that hospital thing for all that stuff. And Mayor Gallego and members of the City Council, it's good to hear from all of you guys again. It's just because I am autistic. I'm just living in Levine for like 13 years. And also, Mayor Gallego and members of the City Council, have a wonderful day. And also to infinity and beyond.
Thank you, Mark. We will close the public hearing because what can you say beyond that? Councilwoman Ansari, or I'm sorry, Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. Motion to approve item 71 per the Planning Commission recommendation and adopt the related resolution.
Second.
Roll call.
Ansari.
Yes.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Stark. Waring.
Yes. Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
All right, for our final agendized item 72, Councilmember Garcia.
Motion to approve item 72 per the Planning Commission recommendation and adopt the related ordinance.
Second.
Roll call.
Ansari.
Yes.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Stark.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Woo. Thank you. That concludes the agendized portion of our meeting, and now we go to the final portion, which is citizen comments. I will turn to our city attorney to explain this portion.
Thank you, Mayor. During citizen comment, members of the public may address the City Council for up to 3 minutes on issues of interest or concern to them. The citizen comment session is limited to 30 minutes. The Arizona Open Meeting Law permits the City Council to listen to the comments, but prohibits the council members from discussing or acting on the matters presented.
Thank you. And I will turn briefly to Councilwoman Stark. Or to Vice Mayor?
I'm sorry. Been a long day. I just wanted to announce that it's Josh's. Where are you, Josh? It's Josh's birthday. So happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
And now we will go to citizen comment, and I will ask our staff to call the citizens who are here to comment.
Our first virtual speaker is Mark Rodriguez. Mark, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me guys okay?
Yes, you may proceed.
Okay, Mayor Gallego and members of the City Council, it's good to hear from you guys again for a second time. It's because all the communities of Phoenix and districts and all that stuff and all the other people in the community and Mayor Gallego, Vice Mayor Lord Pastor, you guys rock. And also, I've been a Phoenix resident for almost like 30 years since I was born, even though I was a young baby at the time. And, you know, I would like having fun with you guys and talking to all of you guys. And Mayor KG, I know you're smiling at me because you're inside the chambers, but I want to see you at the chambers one day. But hey, I'm respect you. A shout out to all of you guys. Shout out to CCO. You know, you're not my type, not a fan of you, dude, but hey, I'm just happy to come with this agenda and this to public comments and all that. And also Mayor Gallego and Vice Mayor Pastor, Betty Wangado, Jim Waring, Yasmin Asari, a.k.a. Yazzie. And I'm waiting for that community center to be open. When is it going to be open? But you'll find out. I called your office, Yazzie. Carlos Garcia and Deborah Stark and Ann O'Brien, too. And I'd love to see you guys again one of these days. And also, Mayor Gallego, members of the City Council, it's good to hear from you guys again. May the force be with you to infinity and beyond, and have a wonderful day. Peace.
Next, we move to speakers in upper council chambers. First is Faith Kearns, followed by Frank Urban.
Councilman, thank you very much for listening. My name is Faith Kearns. I am with Funds for Empowerment. We have recently lost a friend due to a very dear friend who was on the advisory council. And we recently lost him due to the heat. He took every precautions necessary: shading, proper color clothing, water. It did no good. It still took him. He was ready to start a new life out of jail when it took him. We need help for the heat, and we need help for the heat now, not sometimes later in the date. We're going to continue to lose people. This valley's hard on everybody. There's no doubt about that. But all of us need protection from this heat in one form or another. We need to make more stations available for water. We need to get water that's more available more quickly. People can't wait out there. None of us can. We're all at risk for this heat, and it's only going to get worse as time goes by. So I'm asking the council to please take in mind that we must have more heating, more cooling stations, more water stations, not only for this year, but for all the years preceding this, so we can continue not to lose people. I've lived here in the valley for almost 62 years. I'm a native. I've seen things get good and I've seen things get bad. And here it's been going really bad. So I'm asking for everybody to please show some compassion for others. And our friend Michael would surely appreciate it. That's the gentleman that we lost, Michael Feldman. So please keep that in mind, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Frank Urban, followed by Christine Locke.
Hello, council members. My name is Frank Urban. I've been a Phoenix resident since 1993. Just to reiterate what Faith has said, we lost a dear friend in Michael Felder. We need more refreshment stations like water stations, more long-term shelters. You know, he's just a dear friend, and we need relief from this heat now before it takes any more lives. I know it's hard on everybody in here and everybody in Phoenix in general, but it's especially hard for the homeless and especially for the houseless, for the people that are actually out on the streets that are homeless, not in shelters or anything like that. It's especially hard for them. And I just would like you to take in heart that it's especially hard for everyone. Thank you, and I'll close with that.
Our next speaker is Christine Locke, followed by Elizabeth Venable.
Thank you, Council. My name is Christine Locke, and I am President of the Board for Fund for Empowerment. On August 30th, we did lose Michael Felder, one of our organizers, who was at that time an unsheltered street camper. He died from the heat near Cass. It was a heat advisory, and therefore he had done everything he could. He had shelter, he had Gatorade out the whatever, and he was prepared, as prepared as he could be. And people often jump to wanting to blame the homeless person for having died. He had not done any of the things, he not engaged in any of the things that might have led to his death. He was very healthy. It was a heat advisory, and people were dying. Today in the newspaper, reported hikers dying, but there's a lot of silence about all of the other people who are dying. Michael was a bright, compassionate, and energetically looking forward to doing the beneficial things that he had in mind to do. Phoenix has shelters for about 4,000 people. The last point-in-time count estimated that there are 9,000 homeless people in the city. So people don't choose to be homeless. People aren't that irrational, and they're not that different from the rest of us. Anyone who thinks that people choose to be homeless hasn't tried to rent an apartment or even get by with a minimum wage job. It's not, minimum wage does not provide enough income to really survive. So we need to think about ways to shelter people, particularly when we have these heat waves. I know that Phoenix has been making some efforts with providing things to people to help with the heat. But these are the kinds of things that he was doing that did not stop him from dying. So, thank you.
Our next speaker is Elizabeth Venable, followed by Milton Rogers.
My name is Elizabeth Venable. I was born here in the city of Phoenix. And Michael Felder was a dear friend of mine. He was an organizer for Fund for Empowerment. He was particularly good at finding human rights abuses. He personally experienced 2 constitutional rights violations. He never got the chance to tell them to one of the most important bodies that's investigating you all, because he wasn't there. He finally got out. And he was so excited to be part of life and justice and organizing, and all of that was just gone. He wasn't on drugs. He didn't have a violent incident. He simply had his body temperature go up above a certain percentage point, certain degree, I mean, and that's all that killed him. He was 61 years old, 2 days away from his 62nd birthday. We'd already planned what he was going to do. We were all going to have ice cream cakes. And I want to say, it sounds snotty, but when I was in public administration school, I noticed something that was very disturbing. People would look at budgets and see the numbers added up, but they don't look at the numbers in terms of the cost of the human lives payout or in terms of the offsetting costs. For example, I just looked online, and there were about 235 people who died in the entire state as pedestrians. However, there were at least 2 times that have already this year died from heat in this, at least in Maricopa County, if not in the city of Phoenix. I don't know, I can't clarify those numbers, but that's a real number. And I find it to be negligence. I think also you need to realize that housing is much cheaper than incarceration and emergency services. You save about 50% off if you have supportive housing off of leaving a person on the street. So it's a cost savings to the city to shelter people, to show compassion towards people. And so I would encourage you to be creative in your budgeting. Don't just look for the numbers to add up or an ideology. Look for the people and how it will impact the people, because these decisions kill, and they're intentional. They may not seem intentional, but they are. They show your priorities. And if people dying on the street from their body temperature being elevated isn't a priority, I don't know what should be. So, thank you.
Our next speaker is Milton Rogers, followed by PJ Boone Egerton Longoni.
Hi, my name is Pastor Milton Rogers, by faith in the National Ministries. Michael A. Felder was a member of our congregation and our church, very active, very positive. There was something that happened, and he went and got incarcerated, stayed in there for a whole year, came out and was working diligently towards getting some stable housing to get himself situated. But at that time, it takes a little time to get into CAS, so you have to get on a waiting list. And so he was out there in that tent, And my phone beeps. I don't know if your phone beeps, but it says emergency, hey, heat warning, heat warning. And if you look around there, there's no water. There's no place to cool off, not even the little sprickets that spit out the water to cool them off. And he not on any drugs, not doing anything, not out robbing anybody or stealing or drinking alcohol. He's pounding water and pounding Gatorade, and he's doing all the things that he needs to do. And I met with him the day before. And I said, Michael, I said, why don't you come on out to my house? And he's a very private person. He says, you know what, I don't want to put myself on your family. I'm going to be okay. Someone's going to come and get me tomorrow. But tomorrow was too late because he went in that tent and he passed away. And his temperature was so high that he just slipped away. So I would say to the council members and the rest of you all that are listening, to try to implement something or come up with something or a way to be able to help the people that are less fortunate than us. And it's just not Michael A. Felder that we're speaking about today, because if you go to the county on a tour of the heat-related deaths that has came about just this year, you would be shocked, but it's not publicized. It's not on the news. They're talking about stuff that happened in New York and Canada and Russia, but right here in Arizona, people are dying because of not enough attention to those that are less fortunate. So I pray that we come up with an idea or something to put in place to be able to help those that are less fortunate. I thank you for listening to me, and God bless you and keep you in his perfect will.
Our final speaker is PJ Boone Egerton Longoni.
Hi, council members. I'm here also for Michael Fellner. I'm with the Tadini House. We came up with the funding for him to be able to live in a tent. And one of the things that shocked me was that I didn't even consider the heat. That he was going to be in a tent, it was going to be hot. I was just thinking that he had a place to stay. I couldn't come up with the funding for a hotel or a place for him, only a tent. And it just goes to show how we're not really thinking about the people that are dying in the streets. And so what I would suggest is maybe in your planning efforts to continue to think about the vulnerable population here. I know you have a lot on your plate, but maybe in all of your planning efforts just to remember, like when you're talking about streets and roadways, and you can talk about trees and coolness and things like that to help people to survive in the heat and eventually the cold. We have a lot of that going on here.
That was our final public comment.
Thank you so much for that important testimony, and I would thank my colleagues. We had the unanimous vote today to allocate $10 million towards homelessness services, which we hope will make a difference. We are adjourned.